Welcome to Imperfect Love with Dr. Carla Marie Manly, psychologist, author, and relationship expert. I'm here to help unravel mysteries and misconceptions about love, relationships, and mental health issues, plus everything in between. Love is complicated, people are not perfect, and relationships surely can be tough. Together, we'll navigate this messy, imperfect space of real life. When you look in the mirror, do you love the reflection you see? Or do you pick parts of yourself to pieces, or even your entire physical being? Do you dislike or even loathe the body that is your home? In today's hypercritical, perfection-oriented world, your body image and capacity to love yourself might be suffering from silent comparison to the impossibly oh-so-perfect ideals that litter social media and TV screens. If you're exhausted from trying to contort yourself to be someone or something you're not, this healing, uplifting episode with two top-notch body image experts is for you. Today, we'll focus on this listener's real-life question. My best friend says I have body dysmorphia. When I do my makeup and have the right clothes on, I feel okay and even good. But I mostly feel fat and ugly. It's weird because I just don't like what I look like, even though people say I'm pretty and guys are attracted to me. Is it body dysmorphia, or does it have something to do with my mom always comparing me to my pretty, super skinny younger sister? And with that question as the focus of today's episode, I'm Dr. Carla Marie Manly, and this is Imperfect Love. Please note, as this episode contains sensitive information, listener discretion is advised. If you need support, please see the special links in the show notes. Today, I'm joined by two very special guests, Deb Schachter and Whitney Otto, who will be sharing their expertise on body image healing through a blend of IFS, internal family systems, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and mindfulness. Whitney Otto is a U.S. World Rowing Champion, eating disorder specialist, and coach. Deb Schachter is a leading body image and eating disorder recovery clinician. Welcome to the podcast, Whitney and Deb. It is such a pleasure to have both of you with me today, with us, because I know our listeners are going to be eating up this episode. No pun intended.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, we're excited for this conversation.
It's such a pleasure. So before we launch into the topic for today, could you each tell me and our listeners just a little bit about what makes you, you?
Go for it, Deb.
Okay. I would say, no matter what else is happening in my life, I think the thing that always comes through the most is that I'm very big-hearted and just bring a lot of love to the table. I think that's what makes me me.
I love both of those. Big-hearted and a lot of love. Okay, beautiful. And Whitney, a little bit about what makes you, you.
Yeah, I probably have a different answer depending on the day. But today, part of what makes me me and part of what makes me someone who wrote this book is someone who has a lot of feelings and a lot of sensitivity to her own body.
Okay, so a lot of sensitivity to your body. I just want to ask you a bit about that, Whitney. From your life experience, is that sensitivity to your body, has it worked for you? Has it worked against you, or has it been both?
Yes, 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 yes.
All of the above.
Okay, we can talk a little bit more about that.
Happy
So,
to.
Deb, your background is as a clinician and eating disorder specialist. How did you get into that?
Oh boy. I would say, some of it landed in my lap, and some of it was really my own journey. I mean, I myself had an eating disorder when I was in college and landed in therapy. And just was blown away by what being a therapist was, and that just hooked me from day zero. So I think it was both the combination of my own journey and my own background, and really just falling in love with the idea of being someone that can create that kind of safe space for someone. And then from there, it kind of evolved in its own way. I did all kinds of different trainings and internships in different kinds of settings, but was always interested in women's health at the time. And that over time evolved into eating disorder work. And then I met with Miss Whitney, and we started really jamming on the body image piece. And that sort of, I think, was the last tile in the game, and just feels like such a beautiful piece of work. And in some ways, it's really expanded to be for everyone, because we really believe that everybody has a body and everybody has feelings about it. And that's really what I almost love most about the book, is that it's really for everybody.
Absolutely. And eating disorders and body image issues increasingly are part of the world of men. It used to be just, women, women, women. And now,
Yeah.
and the rates of men who are suffering from body image issues and eating disorders, it's skyrocketing,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you
Of
for the work
course.
that you do, Whitney. So as you know, let's hear a little bit about what brought you into this realm.
Well, I started out, my first career was an athlete. That's sort of what I wanted to be good at first. But what I was most intrigued by as an athlete was sort of what makes people tick, and how come of all these bodies that look equally strong, some are going to win and some aren't, and what goes into that? Um, and so going into therapy was sort of a natural way to answer that question. And I also struggled with my own eating disorder. It extended beyond college. But that was, and I wanted to go into addictions. I was curious about addictions, but I got placed in an eating disorder therapy center for my internship. And when that's how it all sort of started. And then I met Deb. And like I said, we were working professionally in the field and also having discussions about our own body image. And in our relationship, there was safety and curiosity and compassion. And we found when those were present, we had very different conversations about body image than when we were in our own critical, judgmental, pretty harsh minds. And so that was the origin of the workshops and remains the foundation of the workshops. And we really believe that when you bring this stuff out of your head and you enter into discussions and you learn new tools, very different things can happen in your relationship with your body image. And just to go back, I didn't stay in the field of eating disorders. I've had a couple different career iterations, but remain doing these workshops all along. And now I'm an executive coach, and I work with people on patterns similarly, on training these patterns and learning new ones, but just in a different realm.
I love that piece because so much of the work in the realm of body image, eating disorders, is training. It's
Mm-hmm.
getting rid of the old unhealthy mindsets, thoughts, behaviors, and being gentle and training the mind, training the body, training the spirit to move toward patterns that feel kinder, that are kinder and
Yeah.
gentler, and allow us to accept these beautifully imperfect beings that we are. So when we look at the question of the day, but actually, before we launch into that, I use some words that are terms that our listeners might not be familiar with. Many people are familiar with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, but if one of you will just give us a rundown on that, and IFS, internal family systems, a beautiful modality. If the other would please give our listeners a background on that. And then we can give a little nod to mindfulness, although it's such a common term these days, but I never like to assume. So please, one of you choose CBT.
You want to take your pick, Deb?
I'm going to say CBT for you if you can do it. I feel like you have a special in. So
I do. Cognitive behavioral therapy is really looking at the link between our thoughts and our behaviors and learning more about those links and practicing new ones from both angles. So changing our behaviors to impact our thoughts, changing our thoughts to impact our behaviors, and working on both those ends. And it has a lot of powerful evidence behind its efficacy.
Mm.
And I'm
Well
married
done.
to a CBT therapist, so who doesn't listen to my podcast, so I'm fine.
And I
But
agree with.
I was just going to say he was a great editor of the book nonetheless.
Yeah, he was. He was.
And I'm a firm believer in the efficacy of CBT. It is one of, if not, the most well-researched modality regarding behavioral change. So,
do you want to add anything to my explanation? I'd love to hear you add on to it.
oh, with CBT?
Yeah.
It was interesting in reading just a tad about the two of you. I saw that you did IFS and CBT. CBT for me, even though I'm Jungian trained and I've pulled in many pieces and trainings, CBT is one of the ones I've pulled in. Why? Because it works, because it's basic. And the moment we begin to, and it requires mindfulness, we must become aware of our thoughts and where they lead us in order to change our behaviors. And as you said, you can do it backward if you go into a behavior and then move towards what thoughts led me to this. Oh, I ate a dozen chocolate chip cookies. That's the behavior. Well, what thought led me there? And you also can do it the other way. You can catch yourself. Okay, I'm thinking this. I'm headed toward those, that pint of ice cream or whatever it might be. What is leading me there? And I think that's a really good example of the power of CBT because it does require mindfulness. And then when we slow things down, we can see, and I take it in my fourth book, The Joy of Imperfect Love, I talk about the interplay of our feelings, thoughts, mindset, energy, and actions. And it's a sort of a play on CBT, but also takes in a bit of other modalities. So I love your approach, I think, especially for eating disorders. And when we look at whether it's binge eating or something as, life-threatening as anorexia nervosa, CBT therapy can really save lives. It absolutely, because as you know, anorexia nervosa, it's the most deadly diagnosis. It's very hard for people to recover from that. So I applaud the work you do, and thank you for bringing such rich tools to us today. Deb, a little bit about another modality I love, internal family systems.
Yeah. So IFS really, I think, informed the book in so many ways. IFS is really this idea that thinking about ourselves as really multi-dimensional beings and really having many aspects of ourselves that we can really explore and get to know. And I think one of the things that we both really love about it is how non-pathologizing it really is. It really leads with this idea that when we bring compassion and curiosity and connection, that we can really discover these parts of ourselves that maybe historically we've really wanted to shy away from or hide ourselves from. So it's a really, I think, loving, kind way to get to know the different aspects of ourselves and really invite them into the space and really, very much like our book, start to build relationships with these aspects of ourselves and the kinds of relationships that can be cultivated in that sort of approach and that invitation are just so beautiful. It's such a different way to do the work. And we both have fallen in love with it. And I think just integrated it more and more as we have, felt so connected to the framework and the non-pathologizing way that it really thinks about healing.
Thank you for that beautiful overview. And I agree. I love how you both keep talking about pieces of compassion and curiosity and how that compassion and curiosity create healing, and the piece about not pathologizing, because often somebody gets a diagnosis and they feel like they have to, that they're chained to it. It is them. And when we have a modality like internal family systems, that it's not, same with attachment theory. We're not trying to put somebody in a box and say, this is your diagnosis and you're stuck here. No, it's about let's look, let's get curious. Let's understand and look at that internal family system, that little system that's inside of you that's talking and, often way below the radar. And let's raise the awareness of it. So beautiful. I'm excited to use these two modalities as a way to address and mindfulness. We don't want to leave out mindfulness. What is the power? And you can both weigh in your own ways. I am a big believer in mindfulness. Yoga teacher, meditation leader, right? Mindfulness is a part of, and we know as clinicians, any change, real change, lasting change is going to take mindfulness. And it's not one and done. We don't become mindful or not. I don't know if you're like me. I have to remind myself a lot, okay, be mindful, slow down. So please each talk a little bit about mindfulness for our listeners.
Do you want to start with?
Sure. I mean, as a coach, I'm constantly talking to people about self-awareness, and I feel like mindfulness is advanced self-awareness. It's being present to yourself with, and it could be mindfulness around your behaviors. It could be mindfulness around how you feel in your body. It's directing our attention and our curiosity. And when we do that, we can collect all sorts of data. We can be curious. We can learn about ourselves. And when we do that, we have some choices to make. So I feel like it's just the foundation of change, really. And it's also a foundation of being in relationship with yourself because it's bringing that presence, that curiosity to your own being.
Beautifully said, and I love how mindfulness, if we're working it, it helps us not judge ourselves. We
Mhm.
get a chance to almost be this wise self up here and looking down and being mindful and not judging what we're doing,
Mhm.
just noticing and pivoting when we are able to pivot. So,
Yeah.
Deb, your thoughts on mindfulness?
Yeah, I mean, Whitney laid a great foundation there. I mean, I think if we sort of jump off of what she shared, it's really so much of the premise of the book is starting to be able to discern the difference between your body image and you being the same thing, or feeling like your body image has a microphone and is screaming in your ear, and the fact that we have a relationship with our body image. So it's really that invitation that if we can start to notice when our body image gets louder, when it gets quieter, and start to really just notice those patterns, it already puts us in the position of having a little bit more, I'll say power, but really just engagement with our body image and our relationship with it. So it's really an invitation to start to track what's happening rather than just feeling like we're being assaulted by it, without any, sense of what just happened. So it's really creating more of that, dialogue, creating the space for that dialogue, and inviting that relationship to start to blossom.
And it's the foundational step in our retraining process. And if we think about, body image standing there with the megaphone screaming nasty things in our ears, the very first thing is to say, okay, step back, megaphone, body image person. I am going to notice this without so much judgment and without so much attitude, and just notice what's going on in my life in this moment. Um, I'm noticing I'm having a lot of negative body image thoughts. I'm noticing that I'm signing up for a course that makes me nervous. That's very different from I am all bad. My body image is bad and I am all bad. So it's that very mindfulness is so key to the Deb always talks about making space between us and the megaphone bad body image, and starting to collect more data about what's going on, and even starting to view ourselves as somebody who's having bad body image thoughts versus somebody with a bad body image.
It's beautiful how you've created the body image as an entity, as a separate entity rather than that label, I am my body image or my body image. It is this entity with the megaphone. And sometimes the megaphone is loud and mean and nasty, and we want it to be able ideally to shift toward a gentler, softer, more compassionate body image. Now, Deb, you mentioned your book.
Uh-huh.
Let's let's just talk about the book for a moment because it's body image inside out. Why did you two write it? What what's the message? If we could crystallize the message, what would you say the message is? And it's such a beautiful book and so well written. How, what do our listeners want to take away from this book? What does it do for them?
Well, thank you. We really appreciate the reflection back. I'm going to say that Whitney is an excellent synthesizer, so I'm going to do my best, but I welcome her to jump in. What I would say is the title itself really captures everything. And in response to what you said about cultivating a gentler body image, I think our hope is when we engage in that dialogue, when we build a relationship with our body image, there's actually so much to learn. And so when we think about body image inside out, it's really this, again, this idea that we're multidimensional and there's so much to learn, and that we often think that body image is about a one-dimensional or a two-dimensional mirror we're standing in or a picture of us. And the reality is there's so many different things that impact our body image every day: our health, our relationships, our work life, our children, our mood, our, how we slept, everything, our place in life, our menopausal status, whatever. So bringing that curiosity and discovering all the things that are impacting the way we see ourselves and how that evolves every moment, every day, is really just a very, again, empowering way, we hope, to start to be in relationship with these messages that are coming through our body image.
Thank you. Very clear, very clear. Whitney, did you want to add something to that?
I'm writing it down as we speak because it's a little bit different every time. But I think what I feel so passionately about is that we are handed, again, we talked about training. Like no one said, let's take this course. And, but we absorb it through this culture. And the training is, if you have this particular body type, all these things will come with it. You will have connection, you will have love, you will be adored. And there is some data that supports some of that, right? But that's basically a false promise, because as we know, your client who wrote in and people think she's pretty, she doesn't have all those things, right? She has a negative body image. So we want to give people the skills to learn how to get their needs met by listening to their body and understanding more of who they are and learning how to give themselves that. So we go from the framework of, if I can just contort myself and arrive at this pretty template or this shape, then I will get my needs met, to, we hope when you finish the book, you're learning how to say, what do I need? What do I want? What feels good to me? And I know how to get it.
So, when we look at the, beautifully said, when we look at the listener's question, and it sounds like a young adult who has written in, who sounds very much plagued by looking in the mirror.
Mhm.
External forces might be telling this individual that they look pretty and attractive, but this internal voice is saying, I'm fat, I'm ugly. And so there's discordance, which we might, even though we don't want to label anybody and we don't want to pathologize it and put a label on it, it does sound like somewhat like a classic case of body dysmorphia. The image says one thing, the brain is saying something else. But moving past that, because the diagnosis isn't helpful, really, it puts a label on something. The listener's giving us a clue. I took it as a clue with this mom, always, it sounds like a constant comparison to a younger, very thin, possibly very pretty sister. What does that do to the psyche? We can see through internal family systems alone what that's going to do to the psyche. Who wants to take that question?
Oh, Deb, that's all. You start with the body dysmorphia disorder and then go from there.
I'll see what I can do. I loved your framework in terms of saying, we can call it whatever we want. All my clients know diagnosis is, something that sits on my shelf. But I guess the first thing that I thought of when you were asking the question, which you know equally and can speak so beautifully around, but is this idea that this young woman, this idea of what kind of mirrors we have far before we're looking in mirrors. She had a relational mirror that was giving her a message, however she would describe it, not enoughness, you could be better, there's a right way to be, you'll be loved more. I mean, we talk a lot. This has really become kind of our baby, is this idea of where body image and relationships intersect. And this idea that far before we're thinking about body image even, or our bodies, we have gotten mirroring about who we are, how we should be, how we should not be. And we often start to, adapt and shapeshift ourselves to stay connected. So, I'm really hearing when you said clue, I was thinking that little bit of curiosity she had, like, I wonder about this message I've gotten from my mom all these years. So I really heard that as as Dick Schwartz would say, as a trailhead to really get curious about what was that like to take that in, and learning more about that experience of getting that mirroring early on. That's kind of overridden whatever other feedback she's gotten. But Whit, feel free to jump in there.
Yeah. I mean, I think we both would probably love to sit down with her and get curious about her negative body
Yeah.
image and learn more about it and learn more about what role it serves in her life.
What is trying to get her?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let's pretend she's here with us,
Mm-hmm.
because we can go into that imaginal space and
Yeah.
imagine
Mm-hmm.
that, because for probably many of our listeners, there's some moment in their lives or series of moments where they were compared to a sibling or a neighbor or somebody in their gym class. And all of those little messages can pack, no matter how insignificant they seem. The psyche's holding on to them for a reason. The psyche knows, wait a second, I am not that. And that's where that negative voice starts, that voice that just really pushes us down because we're not that. We're already at very young ages often being trained unconsciously to abandon ourselves in favor of being or looking like somebody else who's not us. So,
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, and so much of what we orient around in the body image and relationships space is this idea that it sounds like that she got, if you're like this, I will fill in the blank, love you more, care for you more, be interested in you more. So we often describe body image as being a hero or a heroine. So in some way, I would be really curious to ask her, how has feeling so bad about your body somehow offered something to you? So she may have a fantasy. If I get the right body, then I'll get whatever that came with in that original recipe, right? The love, the support, the mirroring that she's looking for. So I think getting curious about how that body image and the ways that she's orienting to it, what it's trying to help with.
Yeah, we have a section called the hope in self-hate, that when we hate ourselves, we hate how we are, and we have a vision of how we should be or could be, and that there's actually hope. Okay, well, the way I am right now isn't working out so well for me, but if I hate myself enough, then maybe I can motivate myself to change, to be something else. And that's hopeful.
And
Sad,
what will come
but
with
hopeful.
that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
okay. I like where this is going, and I'm wondering how, in your paradigm, how do you hit? I'm thinking of, I'll meld several clients together that I work with, so it's not just about one, but a client who comes who's saying, I don't like the person in the mirror. I wish I looked like this person, this person, this person. And it's pretty much what the listener's question of the day is talking about. If I could look like that, then I'd be happy, I'd be safe, I'd be loved, I'd be worthy, all of these things. So, from the paradigm you work with, how do you help them get back? This is the question of the day in essence. How do you help them get back to abandoning the other images and turning to truly and deeply love this self, this beautiful being that likely doesn't want to go through this breast surgery, go through this procedure to get a bigger butt or a smaller butt or a bigger whatever it is or smaller what in order to be loved? How do you help someone do a U-turn to come back to love that self?
Well, that we can take this from a couple angles. I'll take one of them, and Deb can be preparing which one she'll go down. But we can say globally, oh, I want to look like this person and that person, with an assumption that generally everything would be better if we did. But we like to get actually very curious. So tell me a little bit more. If you mashed all those people together and you looked like that, tell me what your life would be like. What would you do first thing in the morning? What would your day be like? What would your friends be like? What would your closet be like? What would the work you do would be like? So to use that jealousy or that coveting as a portal to learn more about what they think that person has, because that's going to teach you what they want more of. So that's one approach. Deb, what's another one?
I was going to say, I think that's my favorite. We talk about jealousy can actually be a teacher instead of a tormentor. And because I think so many people actually feel a lot of shame about being jealous, and we're kind of like, bring it on. This is going to respond to your question, that is actually bringing them back to them. Because if they can tell us about what it's like to have those arms or that butt, then they're actually getting to whatever imprint is actually within them that they're projecting on that person. I was thinking probably the best way to explain it would be an example. I was thinking of a client that I talk about often because it's just such a great anecdote. Is she had this, she had grown up in an abusive family where her father had been quite critical of she and her mom. And she had this professor that she was obsessed with and wanted to be like. And this professor had what she called Michelle Obama arms. And so we talked a lot about what those arms were about. And originally it was about, lifting this much and doing all these things so she could have a certain kind of definition in her arms. But ultimately what we learned was it was really about being a strong woman with a loving partner. And again, this stuff gets embodied, right? You look at someone with strong arms, and that may mean different things to different people. It may be about competency. It may be about courage. It might be about, being able to set strong boundaries. So getting people to, again, yes, we have these general ideas of what strong looks like, or, whatever these idealized ideas are. But when we really get down to what it means to each of us, it's our story. That was her story that was laid on top of Michelle Obama's arms, right?
I love that image because it is so true, whether it's Michelle Obama's arms or some models,
Totally.
figure, whatever it is, we do tend to create a story around that. I agree that my life, if I could be that person, if I could be that individual, my life would be easier. I would be loved. I would be safe. I would be secure. All of those things that we naturally want. It's normal to want those things. And I agree with you. I use the word envy because so many times I see that people are very deeply envious of social media posts, that image they see in that social media post. Forget that there was likely, over 100 images taken before that perfect one came into being with filters and all of that. But it is that envy if you can find what you're after. And sometimes you're after looking like Barbie or whatever it is. And if you're able to say, well, that won't happen. But I can't change my entire being to look like Barbie, nor maybe do I really, really want to go through all of that to do that. But what I can change is something she seems to have, which is confidence. And so that can give us something if we use it correctly. And notice that piece you're talking about, the shame, because we all have feelings of jealousy, envy. It's what do we do with them? And if we channel them either toward truly being able to achieve something that's achievable, like a fitter body. We can become fit. We can lift weights. We can go for walks, those kind of things, but also letting go of those things that are just tormentors. There's
Right.
ways to do that.
And going back to the brain training, right? If every time I look at a picture of so and so, I think, oh, if only, and they blah, 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 right? I'm training my brain to do that every time. But if I train my brain, which I have, because I still get jealous, to say, okay, Whitney, what is it about them? What are you jealous of? How do you get more of that in your own life? Okay, well, I don't have time for that. All right, that's a choice you're making, you know. So that's a training that I am constantly engaging in and will be probably for the rest of my life.
The other thought that I had was this idea of how we feel in our bodies, right? Like when we imagine, I'm thinking of a client who was talking about, what Jennifer Aniston looks like when she answers the door at her house in her jeans and the tank top that hangs the right way or whatever. And we ended up landing on, how does she feel in her body? How does she feel in her home? Really getting people to get back to the body too, which is, whether it's safety, whether it's grounded, whether it's connected, whether it's settled, like what, we really dive into sensations and really help people track the actual sensations they're having in their body, because there's so much rich information in there. So often, when we go back to the Michelle Obama's arms story, it was about safety, right? It was about a certain level of comfort and a sense of safety in the world and a sense of connection with a partner. So we really like to help people also track what's happening in their nervous system and what's happening kind of in their embodied experience of their body.
Yeah. And we think all of this is about safety and belonging at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. When you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, down at the bottom, he didn't put good looks. He put safety.
He
And
didn't put perfect jeans with the rips in the right places.
knew
Although
he
that is important. In the
Absolutely.
Maslow's hierarchy of body image inside out, like it's at the
Ooh, we
top,
should
right?
do that. We should
Yeah,
do one of those.
it's what is it? Instead of like sweets, it's like high heels and tight
Yeah.
jeans.
Because we talk a lot about alignment, right? And sort of ways that when we feel it may be, it may be the Michelle Obama's, and it may be a certain pair of jeans that just make us feel fabulous and we love them and we love how we feel in them.
And I like how you bring it to that piece where you both talked about it in that hierarchy of our needs. There is that part where we do want to find the ideals that fit us, not from society, not from mom, dad, other people, but that is a big part of the journey of life, is finding those ideals that align with us, not those that have been plastered on us because that's what other people expect. And I think I'm going to use a word, Deb, it kept coming up as you were talking, ease.
Mm,
Ease, as you were talking about safety and comfort. And I'm
yeah,
thinking, ease. I know for me, that's what I strive for. And often what I help clients, what I realize, along with the safety, of course, they're looking for more ease, more flow. And it's also the same when we have on the right clothes. When we have on clothes that don't feel
totally.
good, we don't feel ease when we're sitting in a position that or standing in a way that doesn't feel right. If we're eating food that doesn't suit the body, suit what we're after, we feel a lack of ease in the system. And so I think that sense of ease, when we can achieve it, and it can be fleeting sometimes, but the more we work to achieve ease, which is that takes tuning in, because we're all going to have different things. For some people, it will be a really great fitting pair of jeans that makes them feel ease. For somebody else, it might be yoga pants because those are nice and stretchy and comfy. For me, I love the ease I feel in a summer dress. It's just like my favorite thing. If I could wear sundresses in Northern California all year long, I would. But so I think when we tune into that, again, we're back to the piece you both keep talking about, learning to tune into the self mindfully, to get granular without judgment about what is right for me.
It makes
I
me,
go ahead.
oh, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, it reminds me, I think one of my passion projects, possibly at a fault, is about resonance and how we feel resonance in our body. And so it makes me think about a quote that Whitney and I use time and time again, is the Mary Oliver quote, let our animal body love what
Let
it
the soft
loves.
animal of our
I
body
love to
love what it
stop.
loves.
Thank you. Thank you. The soft animal
Mhm.
body of our love what it loves. And just that idea when you were talking about the ease and the flow, right? Is like if we really allowed our bodies to direct us, and that's so much of what we want to help people get back to, is how much wisdom is in the body. And that includes, what do I want to wear? What do I want to wear? What feels good? What allows me to feel more like, what the question you started us with, what makes us us? And helping people really learn how to explore that is, it's an honor. What were you
Beautiful.
going to say? What?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think, it always feels important for me to say that, we're talking about this. Oh, just be mindful and just get in your body and just do these things. And, this journey has taken us a long time, and it, it's a journey, and these are the directions that we have found really useful, but it may not be that simple. It may take time. It may take a while to be able to be mindful of your body or feel more comfortable in it. So it just feels important to say that, it's not just like 10 easy steps and wham, bam, you got a better body image. Like, this is a journey that takes time and often a lot of support.
Hey, I want to pause here because you took me right back to something I was going to go back to from what you said maybe 10 minutes ago, where you were so kind and honest about how you are constantly having to train yourself when
Mhm.
it comes to that little demon of jealousy or envy, whatever's popping up. And I so appreciated that because often people will look at a psychologist or a leader or a mentor or a therapist and say, oh, they don't have any problems. Their life is all together. They don't ever have to work at it. And I'm a big believer in exactly what you were saying, that we are all imperfect. Some of us have been working our journey a little longer.
Mhm.
Some of us had childhoods that were a little gentler and more helpful, so the journey might not be as tough. But for many of us, that journey, and well, I think for all of us, it's a lifelong journey. We never get to perfection. That's why life is so
Mhm.
challenging and so fun, because if we see it as a constant evolution of the self, forward, 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 it truly is not only very humanizing, but it's a game changer when we realize it's just like a garden. The garden doesn't grow itself and weed itself, and it has to be replanted and all of that. When we see it as an ongoing journey, it creates a lot more ease, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And
I was just going to add too that when you were talking, I was thinking about, Whitney and I had this idea to write the book in 2019, and we were maybe meeting once a month and kind of chatting about it. And then the pandemic happened, and it allowed us to start writing much more regularly. So we would meet every Sunday afternoon. And I think for the, God only knows, but I'm going to say the first 6 months, it was at least an hour and a half of crying before there was any writing. And, at the core of the book, this idea of being in connection is really the greatest healer we could hope for, which is, we weren't saying to the other person, you're crazy, you look great, or you shouldn't feel bad about the fact that you slept for half of yesterday or whatever it was. We're just being together and witnessing each other in these messy, messy times, and in these, times that made no sense. So I just think it's important that there are all these tools we want to help people along the way. And just that idea of being connected, whether it's hopefully in reading the book and hearing other people's stories in ways that they're finding their way, and just being in connection to people around you and people that feel like they can mirror you in different ways. That's just our wish, is that idea of how much healing can come in the connection, even if our body image is sometimes in the can, like it's such honestly, the game changer of all game changers.
and that's what people really get out of the workshops. They go, "Oh, I'm not
Mm.
the only one. Oh, other
I feel
people
less alone.
Mhm.
That's what
Other
we
people
hear.
look this way but have bad body image." Right? So,
The power of getting outside, as you were saying earlier, getting outside of the self and that little bubble and seeing I'm not alone.
mhm,
No matter how somebody looks on the outside, they too might be suffering
mhm.
from a really poor body image. Oh my goodness. You two are an amazing force. Are there any other tips before we go, especially weaving back to the listener's question, the question of the day about body dysmorphia and perhaps the connection to this little sister, oh so skinny, oh so pretty.
Hmm. I mean, I guess I would just say rather than new tools, I would just highlight that, curiosity and compassion, we really believe are the greatest tools. And again, how we practice those, how we start to really build our own muscles, our curiosity and compassion muscles, is going to be unique to each of us. But just when you can get some space in there, there's so much I'd want to know about her story and what it was like to be compared. And there's so much to learn. So just that invitation for more connection and more curiosity and compassion, and really inviting that in.
And if she can't, Deb,
Yeah.
access therapy, afford therapy, what do you think about either using the book and doing some journaling? And you have online workshops. So there,
We do. We do. We have, I mean, we've really, I hope we've written a book that people, we always invite people, if there's something that feels a little tender, skip it, go to the next chapter. We bring in a lot of humor, and that we haven't talked as much about that, but we bring in a lot of levity. That's really a big, but one of our intentions, partly because of our own journey and the ways we've giggled about the things that we say about our own bodies. So, I would say, I think I would hope the book would be helpful just in terms of that practice. We really have a lot of concrete tools and exercises. And yes, I mean, I think any community is wonderful. There's lots of online, things out there. And we do online workshops specifically on body image and all kinds of different themes within that. So, we welcome it. And if people have questions, they can just reach out to us at bodyimageinsideout@gmail.com. And we're happy to direct people, whether it's to our resources or other people's.
Yeah. So we have a website, bodyimageinsideout.com, where you can learn about the workshops that we do have. We have an Instagram account, Body Image Inside Out, where you can get some tips, hopefully laugh a little bit, learn a little bit more about us, see us live. And we also offer live workshops as well as Zoom workshops, because the live stuff is just so important. And we are in Boston, Massachusetts.
excellent. And listeners, all of this will be in the show notes as well as a
Here's our book.
plethora of resources. And there's the book. Deb, would you hold it up one more time?
Of course,
If you're
yes.
watching this on YouTube, you'll see just a little higher, please. There it is, Body Image Inside Out, Revolutionary Approach to, I can look at my notes.
Push
Body image healing.
To body image healing. There it is. Okay. So thank you both so much for being with us today. It has been such a joy and a privilege.
Thank you for asking such wonderful questions.
Yeah, it's so special for us to be able to share this with other clinicians and with your listeners. It just feels like such an honor to start to bring this to the world.
Thank you. And thank you for the work you do. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us again. I so appreciate you and your taking time to be with us today. And this is Imperfect Love.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Remember, you have the power to transform your life and love fearlessly, if imperfectly, and it's my privilege to help you along the way. You can find more life-changing content, including my books and other podcast episodes, at drcarlamanly.com. Feel free to submit your own confidential questions through my website. I'll do my very best to include your issue on a future episode. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Until we connect again, this is Dr. Carla Marie Manly wishing you oceans of blessings and love. Please note, this podcast is psychoeducational in nature and is not intended to replace formal mental health support. Please contact your healthcare provider or emergency hotline if you need psychiatric care. And as always, please take good care of your amazing, wonderful self.